Okay, everyone, we're now live. You may proceed. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Chair Barry Bialik, and I would like to welcome you to the October 7th, 2021 Affordable Housing Advisory Committee meeting. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a little bit differently. We're streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website and also linked on the committee page. We also have an option for the public to listen and comment live by phone. Please dial 855-925-2801 and use meeting code 7663 to listen in. For those of you out there with us today, welcome. I will now go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. Please make sure to mute your microphone if you're not speaking. When you have a question or would like to speak, unmute your microphone. Please remember to mute your phone, option *6 after you are done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please say a quick hello. Let's see. Here, Scott Adams.
Good morning, Scott Adams, Urban Planner with Land of Sky Regional Council.
Zakia.
Zakia Bell Rogers, helpmate.
Thank you, welcome. Brian.
I'm Brian Mithrin. Good morning.
Margie.
Margie Bukowski, Weaver Crook Construction. Good morning.
Chris Day.
Good morning, Chris Day here, local civil engineer with Civil Design Concepts.
Babs.
Good morning, Babs Phillip here.
Andy.
Good morning, this is Andy Barnett.
Brandy.
Good morning, Brandy Woodard.
Is Dewana here? I had not seen yet. Don't think so. And Paul Heathman is not able to join today. And Joe, are you out there? Joe said she would be able to phone in, but haven't seen it pop up yet. And then Amber Banks is a member. She has resigned, so we have an open seat that we'll be discussing and will be put out for advertisement. All right. Has everyone had a chance to review the meetings from September 2nd? Any questions on them, or does anyone want to make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay. Any discussion on this? All in favor, just raise your hands. Great, thank you. Minutes approved. All right, so we're going to skip around the agenda just a little bit. So for community development updates, we'll take that till later. Paul D'Angelo's got a prior commitment. He said he might be able to join later, so we'll see how that meeting goes if he does. Meanwhile, we'll kind of move on with our discussions. So next up on the agenda is our list of update reports that we get about the housing market. So the list of houses less than $275,000. It's still incredibly bleak out there. Any comments or discussions about the houses and the housing report? Notice that anything that's good, it's the amount of houses on the market is crazy. I looked over the report, the Buncombe County report. I think it was like the average house price now in Asheville's I don't have it right in front of me, but I believe it was 400 something thousand, and the average in Buncombe was 500,000, which is, I was shocked. I was trying to figure out how that skew happened, how Buncombe was. I think this is what I was reading, that Buncombe was higher than Asheville for average price, but it was stunning. Any questions on the Hacker report about vouchers? Any background on that, Brandy? Like, does that change much to month, or is this like going to be a fairly similar report? These are relatively new for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is updated monthly for my board, so obviously it does fluctuate from month to month, just depending on our numbers. The only thing I would update is because I'm always reporting a month behind, so this is August report, but I just updated some numbers, and actually our vouchers that we have out on the street looking are up to 138 right now, so that's the only update I have on that.
Okay. Can you just, one thing, it was really interesting having Kate from Thrive at our meeting last month, because it just kind of, shared a little bit how their programs kind of connect a little bit with the vouchers. So do you know how much, so I had an instance this week where I guess someone that's on a voucher program would not be eligible for the Thrive program. Do you know how those, how that qualifications are different?
So I believe it's been a while since I've done the Thrive meetings, but I believe that what we have is it's only our PBV residents, so coming from one of our developments, that are moving to a tenant mobility voucher, which is what they can use with any private landlord in the community. And also it has to be a family with children. I believe those are the only two restrictions to work with the Thrive program.
Got it. So the difference then is if it's an unused voucher, or if it's a voucher that's not being used at a housing authority property, then that might not be eligible for the Thrive program. Is that?
Well, right. And the project-based vouchers those go with the unit, where a tenant-based voucher, it goes with the person, so they can use it with a private landlord, where the project-based voucher stays with the unit, and that's where the assistance stays.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So it would be someone trying to move out of one of our developments into with a private landlord.
I got it. Okay. And does that, okay. And that does break that. Yeah, I see on your sheet, then it does break down. So it breaks down what is project-based and what is tenant-based. Yeah. I see. Okay. All right. Yeah.
What is VASH? I'm not sure what that stands for. VASH.
It's Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing.
Okay, veterans.
Okay. What are the? It's a little darker on that. So, and what are the other ones? Just so.
Sure. So that is our project-based rental administration demonstration. Sorry, that's a mouthful. We also have some project-based vouchers at Lifehouse, which is a community. We're in South Asheville off Hendersonville Road. VASH, of course, is the Veterans Affairs Supportive Vouchers. We also have tenant-based NED vouchers, which are for non-elderly disabled. We also have tenant-based mainstream vouchers, which are also non-elderly disabled, but the difference there is anyone in the household can be non-elderly disabled. NED, the head of household, has to be non-elderly disabled to qualify for that. And then, of course, just our regular tenant-based vouchers.
And that's what the other.
That's what the other is. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And we also do have the emergency housing vouchers, which we haven't started reporting on yet, but we did receive emergency housing vouchers. And those are for people that are in imminent danger of becoming homeless. So we're working with HelpMate, we're working with Eblin, we're working with Homeward Bound on those.
Okay. So the tenant-based other, so it has a negative, just walk me through, so it has a negative available. What is that?
That's saying that's how many are available that could lease up. And we could use 100, we have 122 available to lease up. We have 94 actually out and looking of that 122.
I see. Okay. So available active. Okay. So example, if I'm trying to connect this with just to, so I'm, understanding how this connects with that Thrive program or other programs. So in this case, so then in the project-based, it says there's what? Sorry, it's really dark and where I'm at, 87 available.
Right, but the project base, they don't, like I said, that goes with the unit. So that they're not going to have a voucher in hand for that program. That's just saying, hey, we currently have 87 vacancies for that we're trying to fill right now.
Okay.
Brandy, what is it move over to the next block on that sheet. It's talking about monthly processes and it has inspect and re-exam. You've got 213 under inspect. Is that someone inspecting the actual apartment?
Yes, those are our inspections between all programs because people have to be inspected. We're on a biannual schedule, and then all new move-ins, all interims, those are all inspected.
Okay, and re-exam means what?
So our program, people have to be recertified annually for the program. So that's what that is. People who are being recertified for the month of August.
Okay.
So how would, like, again, this actively looking column, how do you, do those tenant, they report to you if they're actively looking? Is that how it's known?
So when they're issued a voucher, they have to go to an orientation, which is about a 2-hour informational session, which goes over all their information. They get their voucher, they get their rent limits, they get all the paperwork that they would need to take to a landlord to get a unit inspected. So, and they're given a time. So we initially give them 90 days, and then they can ask for another 90-day extension for a total of 180 days in place.
Okay. So, and is there ever, sorry, I'm just, I guess I'm trying. So is there ever a time that someone has a tenant-based voucher that's not used and they're currently using a project-based voucher? Like, so if someone, how would the example be if someone's
people that are in our project-based developments who have requested a tenant mobility voucher, they can continue to live in their PBB unit while they're searching for another unit.
Okay. And that wouldn't, so it wouldn't be double reflected on that. Like it wouldn't be reflected.
No, it's not. No.
Okay. And then, so how, so I guess I'm thinking specifically for for something like the Thrive program, how would you know who those people are who are using project-based vouchers who are currently seeking to move out? How is that known?
I mean, it's in our software system.
Oh, okay. So it's just, okay. So they actively, so there's people
our software system to update, to keep all that updated, because there would be no way for us to be able to keep up with that other than that.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just trying to understand like how, that's because when I see these available to lease, and then if I know that there's programs that are out there that don't connect with that, then how we, try to find those. Yeah.
Like with Thrive, I have 2 staff members that work with her, specifically with her on that project. So they're able to keep specifically with her on that.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right. Sorry. I just want to just to understand it better, especially since,
happy to answer questions.
Yeah. Because we had an example, we personally had an example come up this week that there was a discussion about it. So, I didn't understand that connection or disconnection of that. So it helps to better understand that and share that. So also to know that, if other projects come online and follow that same program, how we better know who those who are in project, who are currently have project-based vouchers who are seeking, so we can, to have that number so we know how much to connect with them,
For sure.
Other program, I guess. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. Yeah. And then it's been valuable data to add in, and it's new, it's a whole new set of acronyms to learn. And
I know it's HUD speak. I'm used to it, but it is a lot.
Yeah. But it's it's interesting to read. It's definitely the one that, especially as a new report, I've studied more, and especially knowing some other programs out there. It's interesting, but yeah, so I do see that there's that one little connection that would be interesting to develop more, so we know what the quantity of those people that are actively looking that are in projects.
Yeah, and as we move forward, if you have other questions or other things that you want me to cover or delve into, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So I have one more question. Under the Housing Choice Voucher annual trends, in August, we currently have 612 people on the wait list.
Mm-hmm.
How does that match up with assigned looking? I don't understand that.
It's two separate things. I mean, the people that are assigned and looking have already been pulled from the wait list.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. And then we had, okay, great. All right. Thanks. Any other questions on that? All right. Great. Moving along. So our task forces, you know, we've got our Build Task Force and our Connect Task Force. Andy, you want to give an update on the Connect Task Force, when y'all have met last and where you're going in any way we can support?
Sure. We had a meeting late last month. Again, still trying to get our bearings on this task as a task force, kind of a different group of task force members involved in this meeting than the first time we met. So what we're looking at doing is as a way to really get a gauge on people's access to units and their ability to connect with affordable housing units, is to do some outreach as committee members with a scripted set of questions to the affordable housing partners that are listed on the city's resource guide for affordable housing, so that we can, you know, have a little bit of a sense of what the public's experience is reaching out to those agencies, get a better gauge on what their unit availability might be at any point in time and their eligibility criteria. So those are some of the things that we're gonna take on here as we start to get the task force solidified and moving on something.
Okay. Do you need any help or support or moving of from the committee?
I somehow wound up as the de facto organizer of this task force, and I'm terrible at that. So if there's somebody who's willing to jump in and just wrangle committee members and get the meeting dates on the calendar, that would speed things up quite a bit.
Okay. All right. Maybe we'll look. I think I'm trying to look at the members of who's on here. I think a lot of the other committee folks, but yeah, we may. Yeah, well, I mean, if anyone's out there, or you can bring it up at your next, or if you, because when I read through the notes last time, and I like the, I like the direction you guys were going. I guess it's just let us know what we can support, or if we need to shuffle, see if we need to shuffle around any members, if you need others who have more time to participate or something like that.
Yeah, we'll do it.
All right. Our build task forces, we met last week. We've been meeting almost more than once a month, I think. Anyone, I'd actually be curious to hear from Margie or Margie, would you like to update, because I know what my things are, but I'd rather maybe hear someone else speak of how kind of update on our meetings and your thoughts on them and where we're going.
We've been meeting every 2 weeks, and our hope was to have somebody from the different areas, different departments of the city, come to us and tell us some things that might be shortcuts, things that might be ways to be more efficient for small developers to get started. So last time we had Kevin from the water department, water MSD, and not water, but MSD. And so he talked to us about some of the regulations and the history of the department and how it came to be, and helped us understand a little bit more about why things are the way they are. They're difficult. They're not easy. And not having any incentives. And that are easily obtained by developers. So, and then we've got more people from the city departments coming next time. Which one is that, Barry? I don't know who's coming next.
I've got some emails out. I'm trying to get water in.
Right. So, I mean, we're hoping to be able to pull together some type of guide for small developers so that they can get more products in the market, and that we can take to eventually take to council and get them to approve. I don't know, Chris, anything you can add?
Yep. It was really, I found MS, we put together a list of all the different departments, from zoning to, to water to sewer to, there's a few others, but to look at and speak from experience from the engineering side, the building side of large and small, from the planning side, and understand kind of why there are certain barriers, and then look for whether it's a local thing, whether it's a municipality thing, whether it's a state thing, and whether it's just a policy change that can be affected locally. So to look for the things that are state things that are harder to change, local things that might be easier to change, and then just simple policy stuff to identify in each thing. And it was really interesting. It helped the MSD discussion. I heard something, a few things out of it that I never understood, and it really helped to clarify. Like one of the things that I found was tremendously interesting was that, so when sewer districts are created, they have different charters, and apparently the charter for MSD was created by combining, I forgot, it was 20 or 30 separate sewer districts that were in the county. But in their charter, they're not allowed to extend the sewer system for new developments. They have a quota for lines they need to replace and repair, but it's a certain amount of linear feet over 5 years. But as far as identifying new areas of expansion and extending, it's not in their charter to do. So it solely relies on private developers, which I found was fascinating, because as any other places I've lived that do urban growth studies, the sewer district infrastructure has to be a major partner in those studies, because if an area is made zoned denser, if it doesn't have the sewer infrastructure to connect with it, then it's kind of useless. So I thought that was really interesting, because it's not a state thing. It's something specifically in MSD's charter. So I found that fascinating, because my understanding is Hendersonville, Henderson County, or the Henderson MSD is different. They actually can identify expansion areas and extend the sewer line for that. So I thought that was a really interesting thing. And then Kevin's provided a list of the different MSD committees that we can participate in and lobby for some change. Because that's, like I said, I was shocked by that. So,
Barry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, are you going to share that list? Did he send something out?
What he sent is, so far I've got that he sent over the comprehensive. Yeah, I actually do have the list of committees. I will send that out. And he also sent me the other day the link to their comprehensive, forgot what he calls it, but their growth, excuse me, not a growth plan, but the redevelopment plan.
Okay. So
it's a zip file, so I can send it out.
Barry, this is Chris. I too found that very interesting, that they don't have the ability to actually extend their lines. They can only acquire lines that are built by private development. Interestingly enough, they do have a master plan where they've identified where strategically lines should be expanded and what sizes they should be expanded to accommodate future growth areas. But it's not publicly. I mean, they'll provide it, but it's not like a website to go look at and see. So I don't know what the answer is there, but I think some continued thoughts on how evaluation of that master plan and trying to find what entities could come together to expand on that to kind of create these more opportunities for housing.
You could change their charter. It would be difficult, but I mean, you could lobby to change the charter to be in current day times. I feel like it's certainly outdated.
Yeah, they do. You know, the one thing he did say is the time, so where they don't have the specific, I mean, I don't want to misquote it, but the time that it does come up, that if there's a affordable housing project, they're able to participate in the expense of extending the line. So I thought that was, you know, that was like a little bit of shining light for how we can also connect and identify with where there might be dense affordable housing projects. And there's also a possible, you know, marketed to developer tools, like for affordable housing developers, there actually is some funding. I don't remember. I mean, I heard, I kind of remember a $50,000 number. I don't remember if it was a cap.
It was a $50,000 number, and what I was also Kevin made reference. I don't remember the time frame, but he mentioned
It's 20
a
years.
number. Yeah, well,
I think it's
that there's been about 13 of them, maybe. Just I mean, it's something that does seem to be getting utilized. So when the projects come about, Kevin is communicating that those opportunities are out there.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought it was interesting, especially as we're trying to target in on things that what are the barriers, and that's certainly a barrier. But to know, at least for affordable housing, there is a budget for that, even though, you know, $50,000 kind of barely buys you the engineering on it nowadays. But that's but that was good to know. It was really I find this stuff fascinating, and especially it helps whether I like the roadblocks I hit, it helps at least sometimes understanding why they're there. It makes it easier to target who the worker, you know, where the lobbying needs to go to change them. So, you know, I've enjoyed our meetings, and I've enjoyed you know, what we've all learned from them, and, you know, I think we'll continue to do so. Anything else? Anyone else want to add anything on Build Task Force? All right. Okay. So on our agenda, well, we list our affordable housing challenge. It's kind of just been there a while, but that's basically what I'd say. A lot of those challenges is kind of why we really should connect with the task force. Essentially, I think that's what we've identified, and we're using the task forces to try to hit some of those items. So maybe in the future, I'll ask to kind of maybe just drop that in, as that's part of the purpose of the task forces. Would it help, like Andy? I'll just one question. Will it help? Would it help to have any discussion about what the purpose of the connect should be, or do you want to guys solidify that? Like, I'm thinking maybe in the next agenda, if now that we've met a few times and had more than just organizational meetings, if we want to add kind of what we see as our purposes to each of these task forces.
I think we've done a good job of working that out with the task force. It's really just it's a time on task issue, and if the expectation is we're gonna match you guys on the connect or on the build team with a twice a month meeting, we'll just go ahead and put that out there and make it happen.
Yeah, no, I think it's no, I'm not pushing for that at all. We're all very busy now. I think if I've just maybe for the next, what we can each do is from our just put a single line or two on our task forces that we can publicly share what we see our purposes are. That way we can keep our meetings kind of targeted towards that. Planning open space. Scott, Margie, Chris, you want to kind of share where I saw you guys coming out of the last meeting, so you want to share your filtered thoughts now? Scott, you want to do it?
Our planned last meeting hopefully will be on October 13th. City staff will be sharing. I was just looking at the draft open space text, and I think there have been a couple of really good substantial changes in that, particularly on dimensional standards. I think one of the things that I harped on was an original standard of 20 feet as a minimum space for any open space, and I continually pointed out, at least on small urban sites, that that's a huge amount of space. So that's the current draft proposes 10 feet instead of 20 feet. It's a very specific dimensional standard, but I think it could have a definite impact on smaller urban sites. There've also been the discussion of being able to use things like aquatic buffers and setbacks as up to 50% of your open space, pending that it's less than 15% and actually a usable space. And I think that's been another good recognition of getting a potential double use out of things like aquatic buffers and landscape buffers, whatnot. I'll say members of the Urban Forestry Commission have definitely been the most, resistant to those ideas and others. We keep in our meetings, keep having a discussion about what's a balance. And I think, some of those members perceive that, the balance starts over here versus in the middle. So that's been a point of ongoing discussion, but I'm hopeful that at least we, the members, will be able to wrap up next week and get that moved on to City Council by, I believe, December. So November, Planning and Zoning Commission, December, City Council consideration.
Interesting to see the path from. Anything else anyone wants to add? Any questions on that? Right, thanks. All right. So then, next thing we get to talk about, I haven't seen Paul jump in yet. Is that correct? No Paul yet? So, what we've started some discussion on, and I guess, we'll have a good amount of time now to talk about kind of a scaled affordable housing rebate. We talked about it last, just started a conversation last time, asked y'all to just think about it a little bit. And so now, we get to really maybe just go around and, I guess the idea of, right now, as we know, it's kind of this, any project, it's it pretty much is tied to a 20-year deed restriction for affordability, whether it's for, housing, whether it's for ownership or rental housing trust funds. So the question has always been, how do we get, how do we date before getting married? How do we have a policy or kind of in-between process that allows that, it doesn't have 100% rebate, credits or the same way, but what do we feel comfortable with for different time commitments for different kind of programs that we can offer? How we want to start this discussion. Do we want to, I guess the first thing is like maybe the overall concept, so right now it's a 20-year, is the appetite of the committee to have something as low as 5 years, as low as 2 years, different scales? I guess I'll just really go around, have a good roundtable discussion on it. A little harder virtually, but I used to like doing those when we were in person. So we'll go around and do this. So I'll just kind of call on you each and just share your thoughts, what you have on it, and I can catch my throat here. How about Andy? I'll start with you just because you're in my top left corner.
I think the idea of a scaled rebate could work. I think the real critical question is what, or a scaled incentive, what would be a meaningful incentive for a developer to actually take some action? And, that, I think we would need to have some kind of gauge around, what would, no point drafting out a policy that, doesn't create opportunities at all. I also would think, I mean, to me, with all of, with any kind of rental development, the single best thing that we can do from a policy perspective for affordability is to require vouchers, is to require that the building accept vouchers. So I would rather link, a subsidy of some kind or a developer incentive of some kind to voucher acceptance, rather than to a specific period of affordability that they have to drive, a below market rent rate. But that's my 2 cents on it.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. Area code 7. I don't know who that is, but how about Scott? Since I see your face, and I'll go through the list of members out from.
Sure. So I'm always hearing it, but I can never remember what the breakdown is. The 80-20-80. You remind me what that, or 80-20-20, what that breakdown is? That's 80% AMI.
80% AMI was at 20 years, and it's not
20% of the units.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, when I see that, it just, I mean, I think the question that's coming up is that when a project doesn't meet that, then it just doesn't happen. So it seems like an all or nothing proposition. And I guess what we're trying to get into the discussion of is, a nuance or an index of, hey, could you do 80-10, 80-10-10 or something like that? And so, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely open to the idea of nuance and index so that you might not get perfect, but you could have a better chance of getting good. And I think, if we, or I'll say I, as a, just a pure, numbers and supply oriented person, if it's just getting, more pure numbers that have any degree of affordability, I'm all for it. So I would definitely be open to the idea of nuance, indexing, and just trying to goose the pure numbers and supply higher.
Okay. Chris?
I would agree with Scott as it relates to just, increasing supply to help with the overall economics of the situation. In regards to incentives, I feel like something that would be really worthwhile is a true expedited review process. I think that's something that builders and developers would pay attention to. I mean, if you had the ability that because you were providing affordability that you could kind of skip to the front of the line as you were making resubmittals or some type of a priority system, I think that would be an easy low cost. I mean, there's really no cost in terms of the city's perspective on that. That would be a benefit.
Doesn't that exist already?
I've heard anecdotally it spoken of. I've never specifically seen it come to fruition. I don't, if it is, it's not really, I don't think it's communicated well, or I haven't seen it applicable. The other thing is just that where it could be applied. I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about how the city had come back and basically if you weren't committing to 20 years, then 20 years of affordability, then you didn't get to fit in that category. And the idea of, for a large apartment communities, a builder building a 200 unit apartment complex and committing to 20 years of affordability for a percentage of those, that just works in the system and is not a big deal. But to try and find those small builders like we've met with the Build Group, who are building, 1 to 3 houses at a time, I don't see those folks wanting to restrict those properties for 20 years, or the single family homeowner who's wanting to just rent, to have one rental property. It's really, it would be good to see some kind of, whether it's just the first one or a smaller time frame, 5 or 10 years, seems like we would get a lot more, even if the incentive was a little bit less, I feel like we get a lot more traction.
Okay. Babs?
Hi. So if you guys don't mind, would you remind me what the 80-20-20 is?
So basically the current for Housing Trust Fund, for Luigi, for the pretty much the standard to qualify for any kind of affordable housing project where there's funds coming from the city or a fee rebate, and even a fee rebate program. Right now, to get this official stamp from the city for affordable housing, it's 80 it's 80% AMI, so it has to be below, 80% or AMI below, 20% of the units for 20 with a 20-year deed restriction of affordability, and that goes for home ownership or for rentals. So that means that if an affordable house was created, whether for home ownership, so this is where this particularly been impossible. That means that the deed is going to have a 20-year deed restriction for that it remains affordable. So it would continue to remain with that deed even after the person sells it, if not. And then for the rentals, it's the same thing. So it's what we've discussed is ways, especially for existing landlords or current, or small projects. If someone's building a duplex or quadplex and they would like to rent to try it out because you don't know how it is. There's no incentive at all to do that unless you're willing to have a 20-year deed restriction. So the question really, I guess that's kind of our question: does it decentivize people from trying the program out? And then if we made it easier, would there be more affordable housing that opens up, at least, even if it's not permanent affordable? Is it more that might help that backlog of voucher acceptance or so that's kind of the question.
Okay, great. Thank you, Barry. So,
Sure.
Like the others before me, I'm all about approaches that would increase inventory and opportunity. The one question that I do have from the last meeting, which unfortunately I was unable to attend, we're talking about short-term affordability and that being an untapped market. And I wonder if we have any sense of the size or the potential size of that market, and how it would impact the landscape. But I could sort of logically and rationally see, especially from a single family homeowner perspective, that I would want to test out a program for say a 5-year period before making a determination as to whether I wanted to extend that or not. I can't speak from the perspective of small developers, but also rationally, I could see how that 20-year deed restriction might be a significant barrier.
Yep. Cool. Thanks. Margie?
So a couple of points. If you look at some of the big incentive for larger developers where you're really going to get a lot of units is the abatement of property taxes for X number of years. That's where they're saying, oh, yay. The cost today for property and infrastructure is astronomical. So it's very expensive to build a larger complex. And some people just say they can't get their money back out of it, and they're not going to work at a loss if it's a private developer. So 10-80-10 might be something that scaled or some type of phased in incentives might work for someone that has to put a lot of money. I'm thinking of all the River Arts District's projects and how expensive it is to have to build down there. You sometimes have wetlands and all kinds of things that you have to deal with. So I think For some situations, you could go 10, 15, 20. For others, maybe you do the 10, 80, 10 and give them a 10-year abatement of property taxes. And when you go to the smaller developer, let's say they're not really a developer by career, it's later in their lives, they have a little extra money, they decide they want to do something good for the community, but they don't have 20 years left, maybe. They, and their family doesn't want anything to do with them. That's where the 20 years really becomes so burdensome. And so maybe 10 years is a lot easier to look at. And I think having a hard, fast rule is really discouraging to not only larger developers, but also certainly to smaller developers that the 20-year, it's either all or nothing. So I think there's a definite way that people can say 10, 80, 10. And I'm all for doing it to 80. I just recently listened to the Virginia Housing Alliance, their annual meeting, and for some of theirs, they go up to 100. So 10, 100, 10. So they consider affordability all the way up to 100%, where we're saying, 80, or in most cases, like Lee Walker Heights, is 60. That whole development is 60% AMI or below. So, and it depends on where you're located, that kind of thing too. But I think having just one hard, fast rule is there needs to be some flexibility involved for sure. And I think it could easily happen. But all developers do not have all this big pot of money that they're just able to do all this with. They have to make the numbers work in order to build. And as everyone is aware, building costs right now are out the ceiling. So my 2 cents.
Brandy?
So I was actually not in the last meeting, so I'm just kind of listening and taking in with what everyone's saying. I think it was Andy that said something about making, voucher, like, hey, if you want to build, like you have to accept vouchers. And although I love that idea, Chicago has implemented that a few years ago, and it doesn't work super successfully because, yes, the landlord has to accept the voucher, but they don't have to. If they have 5 people and 2 of them are voucher holders and 3 aren't, they're picking one of the other 3, just for example. So I don't necessarily know. I mean, as much as I would love if that worked and that was, because we have so many people, but I just don't know that would work. So listening to all the other great ideas though too.
So you're saying the one in Chicago hasn't worked because the developers aren't incentivized enough? Like
but what I was saying is where he said, they have to, we're incentivizing them, but they have to take a voucher. And just because we say you have to take a voucher doesn't mean that they will fill that unit with a voucher holder. If you have 5 people that apply for the unit and 2 are voucher holders and 3 are not, a lot of times what was happening is that they were just filling the unit with a non-voucher holder, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. I think Brian, I'm going to look at this. Brian, you there?
Yeah. So I'm largely in agreement with what most people have said. I think it is some of the restrictions on the deeds for over 20 years are an extremely long period of time for a lot of developers. And then we need to look at some level of incentives and qualification for the affordable housing designation, which helps developers with getting things done with MSD and with through the building department. But when we create that, though, I don't think it should be a linear relationship. So if I only do 10 years, I get half the incentive. I think you still need to scale it so that you do encourage people to create as long a term to lock up on these properties as possible. But I think you do want to try to encourage more people to, consider making units affordable.
Sorry, I'm just looking through my list. There's not someone's face I'm not seeing. Zakia.
I'm here.
Okay.
So I'm just driving. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Did you
okay.
ask- Okay.
Oh yeah, what I was just asking, we're discussing kind of the idea of scaled affordable housing rebates and just kind of, first we're just kind of going around asking our thoughts on that and goals. Obviously one common one that's come up about is increasing supply. So just kind of, we're just kind of gauging everyone's thoughts in this roundtable style as for what.
Well, my thing is, and so we're in the same place. My thing is that there's always a loophole for every situation. And like when somebody before me said that you may say these homes are for vouchers, but they're going to get those other folks who don't have vouchers. But even if you incentivize everything, there's always those loopholes that we have, and we have to make sure that there aren't any loopholes, and it has to be it's just the pay for Asheville just doesn't give a life of living, and so we're punishing. It's almost like we're punishing people who make housing because Asheville or employers don't pay. So I have a lot of mixed emotions on it. It's a lot of different fights in it. You understand what I'm saying? It's just a lot of different fights.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't. Has Joe joined us or not? Is there any other committee members out there that I haven't called on that I don't see your faces? Yep. Okay. I guess I'll just share my thoughts. Yeah, I agree. It's all about Andy. Did you raise your hand?
Yeah, I just wondered, as we've had this conversation, and this is the problem with going first because I, didn't have my brain on, but I think about, if we're thinking about that 20-80-20 model, I wonder if there's a way that we can make that, tie the incentive to some sort of cumulative approach to that. So let me tell you an example. So let's say you have, somebody who wants to develop an ADU in their backyard. And so they're building one unit, and they're going to work with Thrive and accept voucher holders. So they're working with people at 30% of AMI. But they don't really necessarily want to lock that ADU unit down for 20 years because at some point they want to switch it over to a mother-in-law cottage or something like that. So, but what you wind up with is 100% of the units at 30% AMI. If we could get those for 5 years, why wouldn't that warrant a fee rebate or a property tax abatement or something like that? So, sometimes we've built this model, this sort of 20-80-20 model around large scale new rental development. And if we're thinking about crafting these incentives to focus more on that sort of incremental development, small developer, maybe even the preservation and transformation of existing property to affordable housing, those three pieces may not need to all hang together if the sum kind of impact, and it's if we're getting 100% of the units at 80% for 5 years, that may be as good to us as 20% of the units for right. If we're gonna do this, I'm gonna buy a small apartment building and renovate it and keep it, preserve affordability, that may be on all the units, that might be just as valuable to us as having, 5 units out of a 40 unit development, right? So I guess that was, as we're thinking about nuanced approaches here, I think we can slide each one of those levers as long as it, and there's got to be some sort of, calculation to think that through, but, and come up with a meaningful subsidy or incentive.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I don't necessarily think the discussion has to be of adjusting even the 80-20-20, that model. I think it's more, is there another layer of smaller? Because I think it does seem to work okay for the larger size projects. So really, it's kind of more that, as you said, that model was almost designed for larger projects, and I don't know if that applies to smaller projects. Like, in the reality, I don't know how you even apply that to an ADU. That means if I have a house and I put an ADU in the back and I want to, get some credit for it, it means I'm having to deed restrict my entire property. So in some ways, the model doesn't even, it doesn't make sense, because there's no way to do that, So I think, the discussion really is for not as much adjusting. I mean, there is that discussion. Does this work? But it seems like we've hashed that out over the years, and it's kind of settled at a model that seems to be working. So really, the question is the smaller. Like, is there a subsidy that should be for smaller size projects, or especially for home ownership? Because none of these, that 80-20-20 model has not really applied to any affordable home ownership projects that I'm aware of. The simplest thing was there used to be a fee rebate program that was much more approachable, that was based on first turn, it was based at that one, that was just based on first turn of a property, whether it was for rent or whether it was for home ownership. And it was, it wasn't one, we've talked about this, it wasn't one that cost the city much. It was really just the city putting a stamp on that certified, it rebated the development services portion of the fees, and then it allowed certified MSD and water to rebate 50%, I think it was, of their fees. So, and it was based on first turn. And I don't know if that's the best model. Chris?
I know we touched on this the other day. Is there data available for those where it was used in the first turn model? Like, what's the average of first turn timeframes? Is that a 2-year time frame? Was it 5 or 10? I'm just kind of curious, as the first turn model seems simple. And like you said, it didn't cost a lot. It didn't take a lot of city resources to do that. So I didn't know how much did we get out of it community wise in that model.
Yeah, we did. I think I haven't really connected with Paul, but I think we can. I think that is like, we literally have those. We have those lists on our past agendas from years ago when it existed, and we could actually and it would track them for several years, so we can go back to that's what I was going to do. Simply go back to our agenda when those were being used, look at the list of those houses, and then look at. Must do a little bit of research on each one of them. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was, it was used a lot more. I mean, it was used then that it does. The program doesn't exist now. I mean, it does, but it's barely used. And to really, research and do a little bit of dive into those, I can think of if I visualize that list, I can visualize 30 or 40 on it, and then, over a couple year period, and then to look at what's happened with them now. Where are you now? So I think that would be valid. So I can dig up and we can share that. And maybe for the next meeting, we can kind of dig that up discussion. Scott?
And when you're saying first turn, you mean, what's the meaning of that term, just so I can clarify that? It's the first turn of owners, or first turn of what?
This was based, I think this was on new I think it was on new construction, if it was below what the HUD standards were for the house value at 80% of AMI or 100% of AMI. It was different amounts, I think. But so it was based on the HUD standards when something was constructed, or for rental. Sorry, I think even for, I don't recall if it was for like an existing house, like if you had a house and you sold it. No, that probably wasn't right. It probably was just new construction. Yeah. Well, we can dig up like that. I know I probably still have application forms from that old one, and we can dig them up. But I think it was based on new construction, because the fee rebates would have been construction rebates that were given back. And it was, so in other words, if someone were to build a duplex, and they were to rent the duplex out to 80% AMI, and it was based on that HUD chart of maximum rent standards, then that new construction duplex would be eligible for fee rebates of the permit. It was the permit fees. It was nothing out of the Housing Trust Fund. It was permit fees from Development Services, and I believe it was 50% of MSD and water. Yeah, I believe that's how that was.
Okay, thanks.
We'll dig that up. But that's really what our question is and task at hand is what kind of program are we comfortable with for less than 20-year deed restrictions, and then specifically for ADUs is like this interesting model that everyone who lives in the city has the ability to put a little unit on the back of their property, and who would want to deed restrict your entire property for whatever what use you have of a second structure on it. So so I'm I definitely I see the common goal in our discussion has definitely been increase the supply of units. So I think it's some us looking at designing some policy suggestions that would do that for smaller developers, smaller landlords, and look at something that incentivizes not just new construction, but also almost like some kind of rebate program. If I'm an existing landlord and I'm willing to rent a unit out or put take a voucher, there should be like some reward for doing that. And I guess our question is, what is matching what we see as like designing policy is what is enough that rewards it, and then some discussion with individual landlords, like, well, what do you see as the incentive? What would it take for you to do it? Essentially, the Thrive program is trying to bridge that in a way. I mean, they are trying to encourage that, and they've been successful, and I think she shared they're about the end of the she shared at our last meeting. I think it was 25. I think their pilot was, their original funding was for 25 units, and they said they've about hit it. So that means that, even if it's just 25, they've been successful with that program to get 25 new landlords to accept voucher housing. So that's definitely something to be rewarded. And currently, I don't know if there's any incentive that exists other than what Thrive was able to support, provide. And it seems like that's something we have, the city has the ability to participate in with Housing Trust Fund, bond, fee rebates, whatever it is. So, another question, and this one, I see Paul has joined us, and this is, I had something on this, big part of this discussion. I had a question for Paul on so there's this 20-80-20. What happens if you break it? Like, is it a scaled penalty? Like, what is the penalty for it? So, because maybe it's kind of like, because I don't know if I've fully understood what is the penalty. So if I say I'm going to sell a house and then it sells, what is the penalty? What has to be repaid? Is there any specifics that get into how that's quantified, and who enforces that?
Yes. So I popped on. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Apologies for a conflict this morning, and grateful for your time and patience with me today. I was able to listen in starting at around 10:15, and somebody had talked about paperwork, which is a great question, as well as what you're adding, Barry. So regarding penalties, it is written in the agreements and the deed restrictions that if you do not follow along, I forget if it's payback, but I believe so, that if you don't do the 20/80/20, we have repercussions written in, and it's in the policy as well as the deed restriction that, obviously the tax abatement ceases to exist, but I do think there is something about payback. So that's written in, and the deed restriction as well. And regarding the paperwork, just, with the loophole, I think was being talked about, we do monitor these once a year. So that is part of our process to go out and monitor the special agreements with Land Use Incentive Grant and Trust Fund, to monitor those once a year. I think we're a bit behind with COVID and doing what's more called desk monitoring than getting out on the site. But we've got those processes and procedures down pretty clear. Regarding smaller Luigi's, I must say I got with the new Luigi for converting market rate to affordable, I got 4 calls from local landlords, I think of anywhere from 2 to 8 to 12 properties they owned. And they all felt just, I don't want to generalize, but in general, they felt the income verification aspect that we needed was too burdensome. I think y'all have heard me say before, if we can align housing costs with overall income, that's something great that we can do at that 30%, but we do need to verify the income of the people living there. And right now, the feedback has been it's too burdensome to do that once a year.
I wonder if it'd be interesting to do like a quick little, I just like you said, like if the tax, what it looks like on a spreadsheet, a penalty. Like, so if someone's got a property and they're getting tax abatement based on the 20-year restriction, and then if they stop, what is that payback model? Like, obviously, yeah, the tax abatement would stop, but what does the penalty model look like? Because maybe there is this program is scaled already, but it'd be interesting that we haven't really discussed much about the penalty of this. I mean, I've seen it, we have discussed it, but I've never modeled what exactly that looks like.
I can bring back the exact wording, Barry, and then in listening, Chris has his hand up, but in listening to some of the conversations, if we do a land use incentive grant for under 10 units or under 20 units, I'm assuming we would want to make all of those affordable because it's a small amount. I don't know. And then do we do points for 5, 10, 15, or 20 years is where my brain goes. Otherwise, if we do the 20% thing, kind of as Andy talked about with the 20/80/20, then if they have 10 units, they could give us 2 of them affordable, and then we're rebating property taxes on all 10. I don't know. And then if we are asking them for all of them, is that more points and then made up with less years? I don't know, but those are the things we can figure out when we get a chance to draft a rough draft of a policy.
Chris?
Yeah, my question, Paul, you made reference that you'd had maybe 4 folks reach out to you about that. And I was curious as to how they knew about it. How's the message getting out? I know that with new developers and new projects, very often they're coming into the city, they're learning the process, and it's a great way to introduce the incentives. But for existing properties, how's that message being conveyed out there to folks?
Well, because Chris, we're so transparent and sending our message out all the time that everyone's talking about it. But we are doing a better job of sending out our community development updates. We've been doing that for practically a year now. So that has been really helpful. But the 4 folks that reached out to me were local infill developers who I think pay attention to the committees and the council meetings. And it was right after that council meeting in June with that Luigi approval that they reached out. So local folks. Unfortunately, we have not heard from any large scale developers on a side note about, maintaining or changing market to affordable, like naturally occurring affordable housing. We haven't heard from anybody on that yet. I'm hoping we get some bite, but nothing yet.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's in the messaging is out there that, you know, it's obviously the messaging is out there that we need affordable housing. The messaging is out there that we need everyone to, you know, think of how they can participate. So I think, yeah, there actually are, you know, good landlords and good developers out in the world who are asking like, okay, I don't know what the program is, but Paul, help me, tell me, what can I do? You know, so I think you know, there's enough messaging, there's enough pleas of help out there that I think there are people who do want to help. So it's, I think it's like, you know, those might be the good people to speak with to say, well, what would turn you? What is the, you know, it's like you keep handing a stack of $5 bills out until someone's going to say, it's like, what's the number? It's a game show. Babs?
Yeah, hi. And I put a question in the chat, which is, are there incentives for individual homeowners to build ADUs specifically to allocate to affordable housing? And I could take that input offline, but as we're trying to be creative about increasing supply and increasing inventory, we're doing outreach to a certain level or at a certain scale, but again, to the untapped market, you know, folks like myself, frankly, who would be interested in participating in such a program. You know, how do we let those people know about the opportunities that exist if they do exist?
Yeah, I don't, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I mean, we've talked about the ADU, you know, how to support ADUs, especially for that, you know, overall is for adding to the rental stock, but specifically for affordable housing. I don't think there is any program that would work for it right now. Is there something, Paul?
Not that I'm aware of. In general, it seems like we haven't had a bunch of, like with that flag lot program and those types of things, we haven't seen a lot of ADUs happening, and we don't have any incentives on my end that we're utilizing right now that I'm aware of.
I think that's because the cost of building supplies are so high and the length of time to get things in, the price of lumber may have deterred people from, you know, doing it if they had a certain amount of money that they were going to, you know, use, and now it's not enough.
Babs, over the years, we've talked about a few things. Like we've talked about, there's definitely been talk about tiny houses because that's a quicker ad use. That's, you know, they're currently not allowed really in the city. I mean, they're not. I mean, and building code doesn't really allow something that's not on a foundation. But we've talked about like basically a tiny house on a foundation is essentially an ADU, but it has to be, you know, currently on a foundation. But we've discussed different ways to encourage ADUs, you know, overall through, I mean, zoning. You know, this is one of those examples that zoning allow. Like we have very progressive zoning for allowing ADUs. Any single property in the city, you know, in Asheville any zoning is allowed. Sorry, I should say residential zoning is allowed to have an ADU in their backyard. And it doesn't matter if it's a single family zoning or multifamily zoning, you're allowed to have an ADU. And then there's an exception that the ADU is allowed to, you know, extend into back setbacks. So there's, you know, so we have zoning that incentivizes that. And it's the same way we have zoning that, you know, with their zoning changes that change, you know, our multifamily zonings that, you know, something that's RM8, which used to be historically 8 per acre, is really almost like 40 per acre. But the issue is that we don't have the infrastructure to catch up to it. There's other things that just don't make that stuff not practical. But ADUs are definitely, you know, one of those low-hanging fruits possibly. That how do we incentivize those? Because the current model, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but the current model, like if someone were to say, hey, I'm going to even want a fee rebate on this, they would have to have a deed restriction, which technically the ADU is tied to the main house deed, so it would restrict their main house. Am I correct on that, Paul, or is there something I'm missing on that?
You are correct, Barry, because that usually, and isn't that something else about building an ADU that the banks want it on its own parcel, which makes more sense for the loan or whatever it is. So Yeah, it seems complicated. I think there's a win somewhere for ADUs, but we haven't been able to figure that out as much in our overall scope of solutions here because of the challenges Margie brought up, that separate lot, and like you said, Barry, it's tied to the main house, etc.
Yeah.
Not giving up. It's just it hasn't been an easy path.
Yep. Another historical thing, Babs and other people haven't been on the committee, things we've discussed over the years that we've tried to get some traction on that we weren't really able to, were the idea of like if you have a duplex, to trade being allowed short-term rental on one side and trading affordable for short-term rental, saying, hey, I'll do short-term rental if you allow me to do, I'll do affordable on one if you allow me to do short-term rental on the other. And mixing that in projects. And there wasn't an appetite for that in the past. But we thought that was something the city had as a carrot that wouldn't cost the city, it wouldn't be a funding thing. It would basically say, we'll allow you something that's not allowed if you'll do this. But we were able to get traction on that over the years. And right now, short-term rental is a big whole new honking discussion because it's in state legislation to remove city authority, municipal authorities to even limit that. So we'll see where all that goes. So that should be between now and the end of the year. There should be some heated discussions on that. But yeah, currently, so what we're saying is like on some of the easiest things, an ADU, a duplex, a quadplex, existing rental, there's not many programs that even exist to allow them to do that. So what are some innovative programs we can come up with? And maybe, and it sounds like, the common thread in our discussion, it seems to be, has been, we want stuff to increase housing stock, that the more stock there is, the more, the better it is for everybody. So, I think we should look at that. I think what I'll do for the next meeting is I'm going to, I follow, especially the ADU world around the country, the ADU world around the country. It sounds funny. But California's kind of just opened it up as far as it'll go and said, they've changed the state rules saying the municipalities can't not allow them. So, and it's opened up a whole big ADU boom out there. And so I'm going to do a little bit of research and I'll bring that in maybe for next meeting as for what I've at least seen for the ADUs have helped, create affordable stock and what are incentives other states have come up with. So I'll share that. The one thing that's happened statewide here at least is, I think, it's just this session that in the past, an ADU there was always an exception needed for an ADU to even be on a single family lot for tying into its sewer lines. So that was now, as the state passed a law that said it's allowed to connect to that now for sure. So I'll bring a little bit more data, but I think, it sounds like there's some outreach that we may need to all do about landlords, even, small landlords, mid-sized landlords. What is it going to take for you to take a voucher, to try taking a voucher or to limit your rental monthly amount, and what would be that incentive for that? And then I think maybe we regroup on this discussion. But I love, I really enjoy these roundtables when we get them. I've missed this. We've done these live, when we're live meetings, a lot easier to do. But I always enjoy hearing, everyone's input and then how we can re-input based on, what went around the first time. Sorry, my throat. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Paul for community development updates, and we'll come back to this, next meeting, and I'll bring a little bit of historical stuff in, and then also work with Paul and our historical stuff about the fee rebates in the past to study where those properties are now. What's still affordable, what's not.
Sure. And so a couple quick things, just, we're really looking forward with all these affordable housing, not all these, what is it, 4 or so, Luigi's, where we're going to be accepting vouchers. I'm excited when those actually go online because, that's written in that they have to accept vouchers. And I'm excited to see some vouchers move into some of these, again, larger developments, and staff is committed to trying to work on a smaller policy, a little bit, as always, full capacity, but we'll bring something to you there. And then just, more info on that soon. Community development updates. I think the biggest thing is just that, the CDBG training, community development block grant funding, which again, isn't necessarily something we bring to this committee. However, we did do outreach. We always try to talk about funding that's available. So we did outreach our second year in a row. We had 64 individual agency attendance from whether it was people who were awarded this year where we made that mandatory, or if you were planning on applying in the 22-23 cycle, we made it mandatory, but it was great to see outreach and particularly engagement from 62, 63 individuals. So that went really well. I think that was last week or the week before we did that. And other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, thank you for your patience with me. I swear the rest of the CD team isn't scared of you all, but to not show up on my behalf, but I appreciate y'all working with me today. Thank you. And any questions?
I guess some of that, since I know these updates were from mid-September, anything on 319?
With 319 Biltmore, we, as you all know, Homes Urban was chosen as the developer. There's been some conversation among council members about if that choice aligns with current goals and everything. We are sensing that we'll be moving forward soon with a meeting with Homes Urban, but we've been asked to hold that meeting off for just a little bit longer. So I think by HCD meeting, which is October 19th, we should know for sure that we are moving forward with Homes Urban, or if we are going in another direction. It seems positive at the moment, but a city council and city management discussion.
Paul, I have a question for you on that, and it's let's say it all moves forward. How long is it going to take, do you estimate, to get that contract done and to actually get started on something? Because you got cut off, unfortunately, kind of in the midst or at the beginning of the contract negotiations. So my clock is ticking on the bond money, and I know that, believe it or not, it's 2023 is just right around the corner. So what are your thoughts on how quickly we could actually start moving ahead at great speed for that project?
So, well, first and foremost, Homes Urban has just been, a class act as they wait for these important discussions to continue to happen at 70 Court Plaza, and they've just been great from the get-go. They're ready to go once we're ready to go. I think we're looking at a 3 to 4 month period to develop the developer agreement, which is really where we talk about the negotiations of, oh, what are you offering? Great. Can you offer this? Or that sounds great, or absolutely not. And all those good discussions. So I would think with a little luck, if we could get started, say November 1st, we could have a developer agreement December, January, February, by March 1st. And then, wouldn't it be great if they could somehow move to some construction by late summer or fall? Again, Homes Urban, credit to them. They have consistently maintained that they're looking forward to getting into the community first and foremost to hear what the community is looking for in the development of 319 Biltmore. And I think they want to start with the residents of Lee Walker Heights. I'm sorry, Maple Crest.
No. Want to start with talking to people at Maple Crest?
Yep. I think that's one of their first community groups they want to meet with. They've got the hospital, other neighbors, but they definitely want to, their first thing is we want to get into the community, and that's step one for them. And I think that's going to take they want to spend their time there to hear from community members, which I think is great.
So probably the beginning of 2023, to be very honest, is when you would probably be able to, what I call go vertical.
I would think you're probably right on. It'd be great if we could do a little late fall, but I hear you, Margie. Absolutely.
Yeah. Sounds like there might be some fresh discussion on this at next HCD.
Yes, possibly, or a decision that, or an announcement or a question that we'll know what exactly is happening.
Good. Some of the other parcels I was asked about Cedar Hill. Is there Cedar Hill is anything with purpose built moving forward? Anything with HACA?
So right now, trying to figure out a path forward for a partner agreement with HACA on the redevelopment of the Deaverview and Cedar Hill site. Those conversations are happening between city management and executive management at HACA. Hopefully we'll hear something more soon as those kind of conversations continue.
Okay. But there's been some fresh discussion. Is that right?
Continued discussion, I would say, Barry.
Okay.
Y'all can tell I put my bureaucratic hat on.
Totally. I know.
I gotta watch myself. No, but it's all good. We're trying to thumbs up, keep these things positive, and keep them, everyone at the table, whether it's 319 or HACA and Deaverview, everyone's still at the table. So, hopefully good things will happen.
What's happening with Pineview?
Pineview is the developers there, as you can imagine, came at a crossroads with costs for Pineview for the 12 home ownership units. Aaron Palmer and his group have been in constant communication with us, trying to figure out a way to pivot to another parcel. We were hoping they could get back into HCD this month, but they will most likely come to HCD in November. Barry, whether that means they show up at AHAC, I think you're going to drive that ship there about how that works. But I think that they're ready to come back with a plan very similar to what they did at Pineview, but pivot to a different site. I got to say, as I probably said at other meetings, this home ownership for moderate income folks is completely challenging. And even us coming at $100,000 a door isn't making it easy for a smaller infill developer at the moment. But with a little luck, very similar deal coming in November, Margie. Okay. For what it's worth, another good group still at the table.
Okay. I did not check with Anna ahead, but do you know if those lots have been closed on yet? The single family lots that went, the city owned lots that.
I don't think that I'm not sure. I know I'm not sure where it's at. All good. I don't know if those lots have closed on. A little bit of a blip and a delay there, but I think timing wise, we're trying to make sure with the ABCLT and their HUD funding that they're getting from us, the home funding from the consortium, but soon, Barry, I believe.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Nikki. Make sure Nikki puts an update in there.
Okay.
What about the Talbot lot? I mean, that's very exciting. Where are you on that?
That's a little bit in the wheelhouse of transportation at the moment. I think as they're trying to put together grant funding for what they want to do with a transportation hub there. So all of that land is closed and all of that. I think right now it's in their wheelhouse as they figure out the funding that they need from, I guess, the United States Department of Transportation and the grant funding they need for the multimodal site there.
But you're going to put out an RFP for the actual housing part, correct?
I'm assuming so, yes.
Okay.
When we get to that point, Margie, absolutely.
And Oak Hill, I assume there's no active discussions on that one.
Developers reach out about that site every once in a while, and I have one who reached out again recently. That site is still viable. Maybe not necessarily for multifamily. I think, as you all know, there was a big discrepancy on what it would take to make that site pad ready, an estimate of 500,000 and an estimate of 2 million. And so that was what caused it to kind of be shelved. But people still look at that. If I understand correctly, I still thought it was because, obviously 80 units of multifamily versus, a 20 unit home ownership community. I think smaller houses can work there without all of that that site work. I think it's the fill issue for a multifamily, which I don't think Chris or smarter people than me would know. Wouldn't be nearly as difficult if it was single family homes, if I understand my environmental correctly.
I don't know. I'm just on single family homes. I've had to dig a lot of 16-foot tall foundations because stuff in the ground. It's unfortunately, there's no like radar you can just put up on the ground and run over to tell you how good the quality of the fill is. You have to dig it up to determine that.
If anyone has interest in that site, we have those shared documents of a phase 1, a phase 2, geotech and stuff like that. So happy to, if anyone ever wants to see that, developers or partners, let us know.
Yeah. Are there any other parcels like that? Because that's that's a really good point that you brought up, that this Oak Hill's on there, but it's like basically to almost put it out there, like the city actually has a few parcels that aren't like on any kind of actual RFP, but that they are essentially, there's an open, they're open for discussion. What other parcels are there that you can think, like, if people if developers are out there and wanted to say, hey.
Well, all of the information is online, but that seems to be the main one. And I don't know this for a fact, but I don't, a lot of our land banking has been reserved until they come up with a reparations policy.
Yep.
I don't think that this parcel is in that, but I'm not 100% positive. I feel like the last time I talked to Nikki, and she's out of town this week, but that there was still an opportunity there if somebody had an affordable housing deal for that lot. I can verify that, but that's really the main one that I think that could possibly be in pay. And about every 4 months, Barry, somebody reaches out to me about it, and I share materials, and then sometimes I don't hear back.
Yeah. That was an interesting one that actually came up, in our build committee meeting with Kevin from MSD, that was actual one that was planned for affordable housing. MSD did participate for extending a sewer line because it was planned for an affordable housing project. And I don't remember if the line was put in or they acquired the easement to do it, but yeah, that was one that a process had started. And then, the developer at that time said it was not possible because of the group at the time said it's not possible because of the amount of fill. Essentially, it was a dump, which half of West Asheville was. All right, and I guess my famous monthly question on down payment assistance.
Yes, so I was waiting for that one. I just think there's no way they're letting me off the hook for that. So there has been a conversation with the potential purchase of a parcel that's come to the city's attention. We are in some very initial take a look due diligence phase, where we're looking at possibly a land purchase that, in coordination with down payment assistance dollars between purchasing and making the site pad ready, that there's an opportunity to use the land banking dollars and down payment assistance dollars in combination to purchase and make this site pad ready for approximately 40 affordable homes, or some type of affordability, or perhaps up to 100% AMI, and reinstitute the dollar lot program and RFP these lots, or maybe not reinstitute that, per Andy shaking his head, but to look at an opportunity to partner with local affordable and infill developers in some form or fashion, where the lots are sold to that developer for $1 to build and sell a home at an affordable price, by nature taking $50,000, maybe $60,000 off the price by delivering a pad ready site with infrastructure, water, sewer. We have been asked to investigate that. So putting out DPA has been about 4 to 6 weeks, is to see if this is an option. Before any of that, we would go back out and talk about this. If we're able to get the parcel under contract and move forward, we would go back to committee and the community. But right now, it's an interesting parcel that's been presented. And I think from a staff perspective, Barry, worth looking into to assist 40 homeowners and in a historically, gentrifying neighborhood, that's been happening. So we're taking a look at that and asking for a bit of grace there while we try to investigate that.
Cool. I'd be curious how you're, in your due diligence of that, because, who are you engaging to help with that? My history of this comes from the Oak, like something about the Oak Hill parcel, knowing when it was acquired, it was kind of warned, like, watch this, don't do this. And it happened. And what, like, so I'm curious, like, I love what you're saying, but who are you engaging to make sure that it's a feasible project?
So the typical due diligence right now, Barry, with just getting it, and with folks we have under contract in general, but an appraisal and a phase one. And then I think when Nikki gets back, we'll be bringing in an engineer to take a look at the actual site with some questions there. I hear you on Oak Hill. We did get and always learning. You know, Oak Hill was presented where we were like, well, between the price and what the environmental looks like, it's about $1 million. And then doing the math, it's still a great, you know, subsidy per unit that works on the numbers. It was only later that a private person said there was no way it was less than $2 million. And then the engineers just argued back and forth about that. It's still, in my opinion, unknown. But for what it's worth, we always do try to learn. We're doing what's called a project charter on this to make sure that we're addressing any upfront questions first and foremost. I'm working on that now. First thing being, is this what the community would want? It would be a typical thing. Have we looked at the phase one? You know, what does that come in at? Engineering, et cetera. So we're trying to make sure we address a lot of stuff up front. It is interesting use of down payment assistance. There's nothing in the bond that says it has to be a traditional down payment assistance program, from what we're understanding, that a loan out, or, as you know, a grant out and all of that. So we feel it could be feasible pathway forward, but until we get through due diligence, that's all we know. And we will bring these conversations back to AHAC and HCD, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going to go. Like, again, this is a really interesting policy shift that I'm glad you're sharing. It's something that, yes, should be, I feel like that should be something coming to our committee for discussion on the policy before it's being applied to a particular parcel. You know.
So please know on that, Barry, that there's nothing signed. There's no agreement to purchase. I think if we do go to, you know, a agreement where, you know, we've got a 60 or 90 or 120 day due diligence, and we're like, okay, this looks good. I think that's immediately when we come to committee to say, this is what's in front of us. You know, how does everyone feel about this? And then that's where we start collecting feedback from committees, stakeholders, and most importantly, the community.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's really interesting to hear. Yeah. So we'll make sure maybe that that becomes that discussion on that policy, because that is a really interesting policy that could apply to even things like Oak Hill or other, you know, it could apply to other things, and or even individual lots. Like if there was a rebate that can be used if someone has a lot and they can use that for getting down, you know, it's really interesting. It is innovative. I like that. But I also think
we don't know where, you know, will people think it's a great idea, or we'll go back to, you know, another 3 months of back and forth, or 6, you know, we have a 2-year limit on that funding. Which, you know, if we do a down payment assistance program, we can probably, that money will be gone first, second, but we are trying to find a, you know, strategic and effective way to be able to do something here. And this is something that's come up in the last, like I said, 4 to 6 weeks that we're investigating.
Has that been, so that could be, I guess that's being vetted as a legal use, like that could be for the down payment assistance, that could be an applied use of it?
From so far of our investigation, we believe so, because there's nothing specifically written in, and by nature of that, we'd be buying each house down by that pad ready lot price with infrastructure, if that's the best way to say that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Andy?
No decisions made. Just
no, I know. I think we'll make sure we'll make sure this is actually. Yeah. I'll probably ask that this is on our agenda next time for complete discussion about it. I mean, I like that, not just for that individual parcel, but as a potential policy. So,
we should know something by then.
Yeah, Andy, you're muted.
2 things that I didn't notice in this report that I was curious about. One is how's the affordable housing uses or eligible uses in the American Recovery Plan funding being evaluated? I know the city has a RFP out for ARP funds now. How will those be reviewed? Does AHAC need to play a role in elevating the affordable housing uses for ARP funds? Second question, the County Affordable Housing Committee has been in their recent meetings been working on long-range goal setting and also sharing a lot of information about city-county partnerships around the state. I'm wondering what the city conversation has been, either at the staff level with your counterparts in the county around that goal setting exercise, and is there a role that AHAC can play in helping to forge some continuity between county goal setting and city goal setting around affordable housing?
So first question first, we'll be adding in the ARPA information to the next community development update. So you'll see that I believe that anyone signed up on our community development updates, I think we sent out that last week, all the information about the ARPA funds that are available and what that process looks like. We'll be adding that into updates in the next week or two for HCD. And so you'll see those. But for anyone on this call who's not signed up for community development, please put something in the chat and we can add you to that. So we sent that information out, but we will be adding it to updates. Regarding partnerships, I know I'm not sure what conversations are happening at the executive level on each side of the aisle with the county and the city and coordination with ARPA funds or affordable housing. And right now, with our division and their division, I don't think we're having any direct communications on partnerships that I'm aware of. I can always check with Nikki. I know that we've always talked with partnerships with the county about partnering on a 4% tax credit deal every 2 to 3 years. And if they would mirror our land use incentive grant policy, I know are the two things that we've been pretty consistent on talking about for probably 3 years. But everyone's so busy. But I can find out if there's any conversations I'm not aware of with the county. I know
Paul, they are working on a 4%. They've been talking about that for the last couple of meetings on understanding it better, trying to figure out how they can play a part in a public-private 4% tax credit deal. So that's top of mind for them right now.
That's great. And I know Brownie's very aware of our offer about the partnership and the discussion. So that's good to know, Margie. I think there is an effort out there from some group, which is going to blank right now, about trying to, maybe it's Land to Sky, but I'm not sure, but just talking about some better coordinated efforts around a lot of these affordable housing issues. None that are on the table at the moment that I'm aware of, Andy.
One of the things this is me personally, think we could be talking to them about would be the Deschutes property, better known as, well, I call it Deschutes Ferry Road. That's 137 acres. Now, it's not the greatest site, but it's 137 acres that they are going to be putting an RFP for a master plan development out. And it sounds, I would think that the city and the county together, it could be a win-win for everybody and produce a lot of affordable housing.
Sure. And absolutely. So I'll write that down and add that to my check-in with Nikki about that parcel.
Chris, do you know anything? Can you share? I'm sure you were involved in the Deschutes when it was looking for the brewery.
I was not involved in the Deschutes.
Oh, you weren't?
Aspect. Okay. No, I've looked at the property and understand some of the opportunities and constraints, but I don't know any of those details.
Okay. I think one other about community development updates that I'll let Margie. I remember it's a question you had asked me, Margie, about before the HED meeting when we read the updates about like a lower priority of homeownership. Do you recall?
Yeah, I saw where it looked like on the HCD agenda, home ownership funds were a lower priority than other things. It had just taken having a policy It had taken kind of a tumble from being really prominent last year to not as prominent. Reparations took its place, I think, or some other things. They had a list and it had fallen down to quite a few spots.
You know what we're talking about, Paul, or is that just maybe just an order of, it just wasn't meant to be a numbered priority, whatever that list was?
Maybe it's something from the city council sessions about priorities for ARPA funds. I'm not sure, but from a community development perspective, we weigh the rental and home ownership equally. That was kind of driven by Keith, Councilman Keith, a couple of years ago. We're just not seeing nearly as many home ownership partners come forward. So that might have been the list about when it came to affordable housing for ARPA, and a list of where the priorities are. And to Barry's point, they may have just been a list, not numerical.
Okay, I'll see if I can't find that piece of paper and send it to you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on community development updates? Anything you want to share, or any questions about not just on the specific community development updates, but we have the CDBG reports and the homeless updates. Any questions or anything Paul wants to share? That okay.
Are you talking about the Ramada Inn or the homeless shelter or anything like that, Barry?
We have not discussed it. No, I was just asking in your updates, attached to our agenda, besides the regular community development updates, there were
gotcha.
2 separate update reports. So I was just seeing if any committee members have any questions about those.
Got it.
Yeah.
Homeless for CDBG CB, the COVID funding.
Yeah. Okay. And then we are, I'm asking to be on, for our discussion, to be on the next HD agenda about just the discussion about us being allowed to be, just to give input on the Housing Trust Fund and Luigi applications. Are there any new ones that coming to HCD?
So I know that we've got the land use incentive grant for the Castinger Group at the old Fuddrucker site, but that's on council on, I believe, November 9th. Next month, we might be seeing Aaron Palmer come back for a housing trust fund regarding the Pine View property and the split, like we talked about, the pivot. And then I believe Haywood Street Congregation might be coming in for a housing trust fund loan in November as well. For HCD this month, no. We just have right now annual updates to the annual action plan, some loan modifications from MHO, and a Haywood Street update about what they're hoping to do with funding. I think those are the 3 things on the agenda right now that's kind of getting solidified.
Okay. Cool. And has there been, I guess it's all still unknown. Has there been any discussion on City Inn for when things are going live? What is the policy in in the city offices? Like how many people are back? Are people back to work? Not at the, I'm just curious, where things are working.
It's a good question. I don't know overall. I know community development with everything going on, and hopefully we've been hanging our head high on our work. We're mostly all working virtually. Everybody in the team works from home 4 days a week and in the office 1. I'm in 2. Nikki's in 3. And but I don't see a lot of people in the building, but I can just really speak for community and economic development. And I haven't heard anything. I know numbers are going down. My brain is thinking out loud, and that maybe after the new year, if the numbers keep getting right, we get through the holiday season and things are looking good, that maybe a little bit of back to normal by March 1st or something like that. I do think that there has been some positive comments from community or staff about a blended hybrid schedule that works for people. So we'll see. But right now, I think I'm only one of 4 people on the floor at the moment. We just come here and close our doors, so it's not necessarily fun.
Yeah.
But just to be safe, we've definitely had some COVID incidences of people being exposed and all getting COVID, so we're being very cautious.
Sure. Yeah.
Those elevators are all going to be brand new, shiny, and working, and there's not going to be anybody to use them.
Margie's just dying to get us back in this building.
I am.
Yeah, I think like development services, they're still pretty. I think they're still mostly working remote. They usually have. There's some people in the office, but it's pretty scarce there. All right. Let's see. I think we do have. Is there any? Before we go to public comment, any kind of informal discussions or anything anyone wants to see on future agendas? And we identified a few things. Is there anything anyone wants to bring to the table that we could bring to the top for getting on future agendas? Cool. All right. So we do have. I don't know if I printed out. So I might need your help on this, Paul or Christine. About we had a public comment, and it was basically someone had basically wrote in asking if we were live. I don't know if anyone has it to read it out loud, because I don't know if we're required to read it out loud. But I don't know if I printed it. But it was basically there was a question someone had asked if we meet live, and you've seen it. I mean, they've seen it. Responded to it about saying that that we do meet live, and that our meetings are broadcast live, so it's not just a delayed meeting. And if anyone has that, can help me out on that, to read it, because I think we're technically supposed to.
Yeah, Barry. This is Christina Harris here. I am getting that pulled up now.
And I think we do also have the ability to take live, I believe. Comments.
Yeah, we do have the ability to take live comments, and like you mentioned before, the citizen just sent an email to public input, which is what we're hosting these live meetings on, and they just requested if we will be, or this is particularly what it says, the public access by web address. Can these meetings be viewed in real time? I did take the liberty to reach out to them via their email address and let them know that the meetings are live. They can see that on public input and YouTube. And I gave them the link to our public input that we host these live meetings on. So I didn't get any response back from them. So I figure that they are all sorted out.
Okay. And we are able to take live public comments now. Is there any comments? Any people in our queue?
We do not have anyone in the caller queue at this time.
Okay. Super. All right. If anyone, unless anyone has anything they'd like to bring or say, we can adjourn. Is there anyone out there wants to add or ask anything? With that said, then I guess we can adjourn our meeting. Thank you all for attending. I appreciate it. Always appreciate the conversations, and we'll continue them next month. Thank y'all.
Have a good
Thank
day,
you and have a good day.
Bye-bye.